The Wonderful Wizard of All. It was springtime on the island of Sodor and North America, and the trains on the tracks were being really useful as the controllers asked them to by pulling passengers, freight, or any other item they could bring. Amtrak does a good job going from city to city year-round. Although trains can be double-decker or single-decker, the California Zephyr goes from Chicago, Illinois to Emeryville, California, and the transition car is located toward the baggage car or other cars. One day, Becky was delivering cardboard boxes to New Beverly. It was a really important job, and the sun was shining and the birds were singing, and Becky carried on. I love springtime, Becky said. The sun shines, the birds sing, and the weather gets really warm. Becky arrived at New Beverly just in time. Here I am, she said. Then Mr. Cakester arrived. My son is having his birthday party tomorrow, so I'd like you to be in charge while I'm away. Oh, thank you, sir. I love that, Becky said. And she steamed off to the yard. I like being really useful, Becky said. Women engines like me can be really useful to pull goods wherever they need to go. She arrived in New Michigan rail yard. She had to collect her goods. I have a train of hazardous materials today. She smiled at the two engines. She was excited. Ida and Dwee were talking in the yard. I've heard tomorrow's Mr. Cakester's birthday, said Dwee. He's gonna take the day off so he can have his child's birthday party, said Ida. I know, he told me that, said Becky. Before long, a whole long line of freight cars was filled with hazardous materials for Becky to take to Vickerstown, and it had 74 cars. Before long, the freight cars came to a stop, and Becky buffered up to the leading freight car, and she steamed out of the yard. Woman train coming through, Becky said. Chugga 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 choo choo! Becky train coming through! She heaved and she huffed, and she pulled out of the yard. I like being useful, Becky said, 'cause women engines like to pull goods like this. Then she came into a tunnel. Her lamp shone all around as she steamed through. Before long, daylight came again, and Becky steamed along. I must get these goods delivered, Becky puffed to herself. And then she came into a track surrounded by farm fields. I love the farm fields, Becky said, because corn grows and the tractor plows the fields and the farmer does a good job. 74 cars was long, but Becky carried on. Then ahead was a grade crossing, and the U-Haul truck stopped at the crossing to look both ways and then drove away. Then the gates went down. "Woman train coming up," Becky said as her ditch lamps blinked. And she steamed over the crossing. She was being really useful. And then she came into the big town. "I love this town," Becky said, "'cause women trains like me can be useful." And she steamed through the forest. Then there was trouble. Becky pulled into a station, and then she came to a grinding halt when there was Diesel 10. "What do you puffballs want?" Diesel 10 said. "Pinchy wants to eat you and chop you up into pieces!" "Stop that!" snapped Becky. "That's enough!" "No, it isn't!" Diesel 10 said. "'Cause Pinchy wants to cut you up! 'Cause you're a junk!" This made Becky really sad, and then she began to reverse direction due to an emotional injury after Diesel 10 blasted away, and the train cars were full of toxic materials. And Becky went fast backwards. Meanwhile, Nancy was delivering produce to the grocery store. She was doing a fine job. "Diesel 10 hurt my feelings!" Becky cried. "And he frightened me!" "Becky, what are you doing?" Nancy said. "You're not supposed to go backwards! Stop!" Nancy's driver threw on the emergency brakes. But it was too late! When the dust cleared, Becky saw what had happened. Luckily, no one was hurt, but some freight cars had toppled over, and the freight cars had derailed, but the brake van was not with all the cars, and Nancy had turned on her side. "Sorry, Becky," she said. "I didn't see you puffing backwards." "No problem," Becky said. "Diesel 10 just hurt my feelings, 'cause he told me I was junk." She was upset. Mr. Cakester arrived at the wreck. He was worried. "I'm sorry, sir," Becky said. "My feelings got hurt after Diesel 10 told me I was junk due to his big, huge claw. Cheer up, Becky, Mr. Cakester said. I'm sure this accident wasn't a big deal. You didn't do it on purpose. I think it was an accident. Just then, Ida came to the rescue. I'll have you back on the tracks in no time, said Ida. And she pulled with all her might. And she huffed and puffed and chuffed. And at last, Becky was back on the rails. Thank you, Ida. You're a really useful woman engine, said Becky. She was feeling pleased with herself. You are most welcome, Becky, said Ida. I'm glad to help you if I get through the rain, okay? And she steamed off to collect her train. After the wreck was cleaned up, Becky saw Thomas in the yard. Not only did Diesel 10 hurt my feelings to call me junk, Becky said, but he also used Pinchy and clapped it up and down. That's horrible, said Thomas. I hope Diesel 10 doesn't do that with Pinchy again. He was worried. It's nothing, Thomas, Becky said. Thomas just smiled. Little engines can do big things. You should take these hopper cars to the desert, he said. That's a really good idea, Thomas, Becky said. Before long, Thomas was shunting Becky's hopper cars into place. And she steamed off to the desert. This desert was really busy before COVID, Becky said to herself, 'cause women engines like me can be really useful by pulling hopper cars. Before long, she arrived just in time. A few minutes later, the hopper cars were loaded with stuff in their bunkers. And Becky backed the freight cars to the roundhouse.